She does not use an alarm clock. She never has. Every single morning, at exactly 4 in the morning, her eyes open, her feet touch the floor, and she begins the same quiet ritual she has followed for over 7 decades. No phone screen. No caffeine. Just stillness, warm water, and a window that faces east. Scientists who have studied her brain activity call what happens inside her head during those early hours something they genuinely cannot explain with the tools they currently have. Neurologists who have reviewed her scans say her prefrontal cortex shows the activity of someone 30 years younger, and not slightly younger either. Measurably, dramatically younger. This is the story of a woman whose daily habit has baffled researchers, inspired millions, and quietly rewritten what we thought we knew about the ceiling of the human mind. Her name is Estelle, and she was born in a small rural town in 1916. She grew up without electricity in the home until she was a teenager, and that early relationship with natural light, the kind that dictated when the household woke and when it went to sleep, shaped every decade that followed. By the time she was in her 30s, waking before the sun was not a discipline she practiced. It was simply the way her body worked. She did not think of it as a health strategy. She did not wake at 4 in the morning to be productive or to win at some imaginary game of self-improvement. She woke because her body called her to, the same way a rooster answers the dark without being asked. That naturalness, that unforced rhythm, would turn out to be one of the most significant things about her story. When researchers from a university aging institute first visited Estelle at the age of 103, they came expecting the usual findings. They anticipated a woman who had lived carefully, eaten modestly, and perhaps carried a fortunate genetic hand. What they did not expect was the data that came back from her cognitive assessments. Her short-term memory tested at levels consistent with a woman in her mid-70s. Her reaction time, while naturally slower than a young adult, was still within normal range for someone 2 decades younger than her actual age. Her verbal fluency, her ability to retrieve words and form coherent, layered sentences, was remarkable. The lead researcher on the study admitted in a published interview that she changed his assumptions about the upper boundary of cognitive preservation. What scientists found even more striking than her test scores was the pattern behind them. Estelle's brain did not just perform well in isolation. It performed consistently. Year after year, as the research team returned for follow-up visits, her scores did not decline at the rate the models predicted. The usual expectation in longevity research is a steady, measurable drop in cognitive function once a person passes 100. With Estelle, that drop simply was not arriving on schedule. Researchers began to look at her daily habits with new intensity, trying to isolate which variable or combination of variables was protecting her brain with such unusual stubbornness. The answer they kept circling back to was something almost laughably simple: the hours she kept and what she did in them. The 4 o'clock hour, as it turns out, is not arbitrary. Researchers studying circadian biology, the internal clock that governs nearly every cell in the human body, have found that waking in alignment with the body's natural cortisol surge, which begins rising sharply in the early morning hours, has a measurable impact on mood regulation, immune function, and memory consolidation. Estelle had never read a study on cortisol. She could not have told you what a circadian rhythm was in scientific terms. But her body had been honoring that rhythm for longer than most people alive today have been walking the earth. The scientific community was not discovering something new in her habits. In many ways, they were rediscovering something ancient that modern life had quietly dismantled. After the initial wave of scientific curiosity, journalists and filmmakers began arriving at Estelle's door. She received them all with the same unhurried warmth, offered them tea, and answered their questions without performing. She was not trying to be a symbol. She was not trying to teach anyone anything. She simply lived, and the living was extraordinary enough to draw the world to her porch. What struck every visitor who spent real time with her was not some dramatic secret ritual or exotic supplement regimen. It was the ordinariness of her days and the deep intentionality within that ordinariness. She moved slowly, but she moved with full presence. She spoke in complete thoughts, without rushing to fill silence. She laughed often, and the laugh was not the careful laughter of someone performing contentment. It was genuine. Her mornings followed a sequence she could describe from memory without pausing. She rose at 4, drank 2 glasses of warm water that she prepared the night before and left in a thermos on her bedside table. She sat by the window for 20 minutes in complete quiet. She did not meditate in the way apps and wellness culture have packaged the concept. She simply sat. She looked at the dark becoming lighter. She breathed. After that, she moved slowly through a series of stretches she had learned from her mother, movements passed down without a name, simply called the morning routine. Then she prepared a small, warm breakfast, ate it without screens or noise, and spent the next hour reading or writing in her journal before the rest of the household stirred. Researchers note that nearly every element of Estelle's morning sequence corresponds, entirely by accident or entirely by design depending on your perspective, with evidence-based recommendations for healthy aging. The hydration she prioritized immediately upon waking has been validated by studies showing that older adults who are chronically mildly dehydrated experience faster cognitive decline and higher rates of chronic illness. The quiet sitting practice, whatever she chose to call it, produced measurable reductions in cortisol according to monitoring done during research visits. The quiet sitting practice, whatever she chose to call it, produced measurable reductions in cortisol according to monitoring done during research visits. And the journaling, the quiet act of putting language to thought, has been linked in multiple studies to stronger memory recall and emotional resilience in aging populations. What her life also illustrated, and what researchers found difficult to separate from the physical habits, was the quality of her social world. Estelle had outlived nearly everyone she had grown up with, a reality that would hollow most people out entirely. But she had never stopped making new connections. She was curious about younger people. She asked questions and actually waited for the answers. She had friends in their 60s and 70s whom she considered close companions, not charity cases who visited out of obligation. Researchers studying longevity across blue zone populations, the regions of the world where people routinely live past 100, have consistently found that social integration, the feeling of being genuinely connected to and needed by other people, is one of the strongest predictors of extended lifespan. Estelle embodied that finding without ever having read it. Her relationship with food was equally instructive, though not for the reasons people expected. She was not a purist. She did not follow a named diet. She ate what she had always eaten, foods that were simple, mostly plant-based, minimally processed, and prepared at home. She ate dinner early, typically before 6 in the evening, and did not eat again until her morning meal. She did not know that this pattern aligned with what researchers now call time-restricted eating, a practice studied extensively for its effects on cellular repair and metabolic health. She simply was not hungry late at night, and eating after dark had never been part of the rhythm of her upbringing. Her body had been in a natural overnight fasting cycle for over a century, and researchers believe this consistent practice may be one of the contributing factors to her organ health, which her physicians describe as extraordinary for her age. The neuroscience behind what Estelle's brain does during those early morning hours is genuinely fascinating. During the hour between 4 and 5 in the morning, a healthy brain that has completed its sleep cycles is in a state sometimes called the hypnopompic threshold, a transitional phase between sleep and full wakefulness where the brain integrates information, processes emotional memory, and flushes metabolic waste through a system called the glymphatic network. Researchers at the National Institute on Aging have emphasized the importance of this glymphatic system, which works most efficiently during and immediately after sleep, in clearing out the protein buildup associated with neurological decline. Estelle's habit of rising naturally, rather than being jolted awake by an alarm, means her brain completes this clearing process without interruption, every single morning, without exception. The consistency of her schedule is something researchers have returned to again and again as potentially one of the most protective aspects of her lifestyle. The human body's circadian rhythm regulates not just sleep and wake cycles, but the timing of hormone release, immune response, digestion, and cellular repair. When that rhythm is disrupted, even temporarily, the downstream effects on nearly every body system are measurable. Estelle had not disrupted hers in any significant way for decades. No jet lag, no rotating work schedules, no late nights followed by sleeping in. Her body knew what time it was with an accuracy that no clock could improve upon. Researchers describe this kind of circadian consistency as one of the least appreciated and most powerful factors in long-term health outcomes. Beyond the biology, Estelle's psychology was studied with equal interest. Psychologists who assessed her repeatedly over the years noted that she scored consistently low in what researchers call neuroticism, the tendency to experience negative emotional states intensely and to ruminate on problems. She was not a worrier. She acknowledged difficulties, addressed what she could, and released what she could not. This was not a coping strategy she had developed after reading a self-help book. It was a disposition, one that researchers believe is partly genetic and partly cultivated through decades of practice. Her brain had become remarkably efficient at processing stress and returning to baseline. Every morning that she sat by her window in the quiet dark, she was reinforcing that efficiency, though she would never have described it in those terms. Her sense of purpose deserves particular attention. Estelle had what researchers studying Japanese centenarians call ikigai, a Japanese term that translates loosely as a reason to get up in the morning. Hers was not abstract. She grew herbs in a small garden that she gave to neighbors and local families. She wrote letters, actual handwritten letters, to younger members of her extended family every week. She kept a running list of questions she wanted answered, things she was curious about, topics she intended to look up or ask someone about the next time she saw them. She lived in a state of mild, constant curiosity about the world, and that curiosity, researchers in cognitive aging agree, is among the most powerful protectors of long-term brain health. The brain that keeps asking questions keeps building the neural pathways that keep it alive. What makes Estelle's case particularly significant to the scientific community is that she represents a pattern, not an anomaly. Researchers studying the world's longest-lived populations have found remarkably consistent themes across cultures, continents, and centuries. People who live deeply into old age with their minds and bodies largely intact tend to sleep in alignment with natural light, eat modestly and early, move gently but consistently throughout the day, maintain strong social bonds, carry a clear sense of purpose, and manage emotional stress without suppression or rumination. None of these habits require money. None of them require a gym membership, a supplement stack, or access to advanced medical care. They are available to virtually anyone. The tragedy, researchers note, is not that most people do not know about them. It is that modern life has been systematically designed in ways that make them extremely difficult to sustain. If there is a lesson hidden inside Estelle's 4 in the morning ritual, it is not that you need to wake up at 4 in the morning. It is that you need to find your rhythm and then honor it consistently over time. The single most underrated tool available to anyone who wants to age well is the consistent sleep-wake cycle. Going to bed and rising at roughly the same time every day, including weekends, is something that costs absolutely nothing and delivers benefits that compound over years and decades. Every sleep researcher in the field of aging will tell you this. Start there. Not with a supplement. Not with a detox. Not with a new diet. Start with the clock. Make peace with a consistent bedtime, and then hold to it the way Estelle held to hers without drama or exception. Hydration is the second thing worth taking seriously if this story resonates with you. Drinking water before coffee, before food, before screens, the moment your feet touch the floor in the morning, is a habit so simple it seems almost too small to matter. But chronic mild dehydration is one of the most common and most easily preventable contributors to fatigue, cognitive fog, and accelerated aging in adults over 50. Estelle kept her thermos on her bedside table every single night. She removed the decision from the morning entirely. That kind of frictionless design, making the healthy choice the easiest available choice, is something behavioral researchers call habit architecture, and it is one of the most effective tools for building a sustainable lifestyle over time. Quiet time in the morning, even 10 minutes before the phone enters your hand, is worth protecting as though it is the most valuable part of your day, because there is growing evidence that it might be. The transition from sleep to full wakefulness is a neurologically sensitive period. How you navigate it sets the tone for the cortisol rhythm, the emotional baseline, and the cognitive availability that shapes your hours ahead. Every morning you hand that period immediately over to incoming information, noise, and stimulation, you are interrupting something your brain was designed to complete on its own terms. The practice does not need a name. It does not need a cushion or a candle. It just needs a few minutes and your willingness to let the quiet be enough. Purpose is perhaps the hardest of Estelle's lessons to translate into a practical tip, but it is the one researchers return to most consistently when they try to explain why some people stay vitally alive well into their final years, and others seem to withdraw from life long before their body requires it. Purpose does not have to be grand. It does not need to be a legacy project or a cause that makes headlines. Estelle grew herbs. She wrote letters. She kept a list of questions. The size of the purpose is far less important than its presence. Ask yourself, as honestly as you can, what calls you out of bed in the morning? If the answer is nothing in particular, that is worth sitting with. Research suggests that finding even one meaningful role, one reason to show up, is enough to begin shifting the biological markers associated with healthy aging. Social connection is the final piece, and it may be the most urgent for most people reading this. Isolation is not a personality preference. It is a health risk, and a serious one. Researchers who study longevity consistently rank chronic loneliness alongside smoking and physical inactivity as a major predictor of early decline. Estelle never stopped being genuinely curious about other people. She never stopped making new friends as old ones passed. She never allowed herself to become invisible or to treat her age as a reason to withdraw. If you take one thing from her story, let it be this. The people in your life, the ones you make the effort to reach, to call, to write to sit with, are not a luxury. They are medicine. Now, if this story moved you or made you think about how you are living your own days, consider sharing it with someone you care about. And if you want more stories like this one, real accounts of real people who have quietly mastered the art of living well, subscribe to this channel. New stories go up every week, and every single one of them is here to remind you that it is never too late to start.